You represent the United States.
The appearances from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Travis Harper. I'm joined here today with my colleague, Miss Jessica Alexander,
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
and together we represent the defendant in today's case, Mr. Blake Crosby.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Government, anything else from you that we need to take up right now?
Yes, Your Honor. First, we'd like to invoke Rule 603, the constructive swearing in of all witnesses,
That's granted.
as well as Rule 615, the constructive sequestration of all witnesses barring party representatives.
Okay, that's granted as well. So I assume, obviously, the defendant will be staying here. Does the government have a party representative?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything else?
Finally, we've never had the pleasure of appearing in your courtroom before. So we'd ask for your preferences before, with approaching the witness, the bench, opposing counsel, and moving about.
Okay, so we don't have a bailiff, so if you need to hand anything to me, just hand it to me. You don't need to ask permission. If you're gonna get close to the jury, I realize you don't have a lot of room, but I mean, if you're gonna get really, really close to the jury, ask permission before you do that. Other than that, you don't need to ask permission. Have permission to approach each other, you have permission to approach the witness.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the United States is ready to proceed.
Perfect. Spence?
Just one thing, Your Honor. We'd like to draw the court's attention to the fact that Mr. Chandler and I have actually agreed on an exhibit number for each pre-marked exhibit in this case.
Okay.
We'll be referring to the exhibit using those pre-marked numbers. We're not offering them out of order, if it may sound like that.
Understood.
We're ready to go to openings.
Terrific. All right, government?
Yes, Your Honor. Proceedings. Mr. Harper. Members of the jury. His anger put him on the rooftop. His training did the rest. It's July 4th, 2022. And a man named Thomas Capello is out Rittenhouse Square just well that way. He's nervous. You see, he's a presidential candidate. And he came to Philadelphia to give a speech, to speak to his thousands of supporters. He tightens his tie, runs through his speech in his head, and he walks up to the podium. He sees the flags, the signs, the t-shirts. What he doesn't see is the man crouching on a rooftop, 600 yards away. He doesn't see him holding his breath. He doesn't see him zooming his scope. He doesn't see him pull the trigger. Before Senator Capello knows it, he's dead. So you're probably asking yourselves, why? Why would someone shoot a U.S. senator? Well, you're going to learn that while to many, Senator Capello was an inspiration to someone, he was a threat. To someone, he was a threat to everyone in this country, to someone. None of us were safe as long as he was alive. You're going to learn that that someone is this defendant, Blake Crosby. You're going to learn that his anger put him on that rooftop and his training did the rest. It's why we've charged him with the murder of a major presidential candidate. With that charge, we have a responsibility to prove two things. First, that Blake Crosby killed Senator Thomas Capello. And second, that this defendant did it deliberately. When we take on this responsibility, we have a burden. Beyond a reasonable doubt, it's actually the highest burden in our legal system. And it's a burden we embrace. Because we know we can meet it. And we're going to do it by showing you his anger, the one that put him on that rooftop, and how his training did the rest. So his anger. What anger are you going to hear about? Well, we're going to call Special Agent Morgan Devico to the stand. Special Agent Devico is going to tell you about a tweet that this defendant made. In this tweet, he says that Senator Capello was a threat to everyone in this country. He says that as long as he is alive, none of us are safe. You learn that this happened just 2 months before he was shot. 2 months before this defendant's DNA was found in the sniper position. So at this point, I said, his training will do the rest. And you're probably wondering, what training? What training did he need? Well, you're going to learn that the shot that killed Senator Capello, it wasn't an easy one. You're going to learn that that hotel rooftop was 600 yards away from where Senator Capello was standing. And you're going to learn it hit him dead center in the forehead. You're going to learn that the training to hit that shot, it's military training. And that this defendant has all the military training necessary to hit that shot. You're going to learn that he's won 4 Army awards. That he holds the record for a bullseye almost 3 times the shot that killed Senator Capello. Members of the jury, this defendant killed a U.S. senator. He took the training we gave him and turned it against us. That's why today, we're asking you to hold him accountable. We're asking you to learn about his anger, about his training, about the shot he took. We're asking you to find justice. It's why at the end of today's trial, I'm going to come up here and ask you to give the only verdict consistent with the facts. A verdict of guilt. Thank you.
That's opening your arms.
Where you're ready.
Take your honor. May it please the court. Mr. Chandler. Members of the jury. They couldn't find the shooter, but they need an answer. It's July 4th, 2022. A Secret Service agent importantly standing in Rittenhouse Square. Behind her, presidential candidate Thomas Capello. She scans the crowd, looking for the glint of a knife or the shape of a pistol, or it's too late. 21 years on the job, and she still gets that pit in her stomach. Her attention snaps to the presidential candidate behind her as she hears the pop of a gunshot. The Secret Service hasn't lost a presidential candidate since 1968 until today. On her. She can't see the shooter. She's surrounded by thousands of people. There's thousands more in the surrounding buildings. She can see the headlines now. Thomas Capello assassinated. Where was the Secret Service? She's not a homicide detective, but she needs to find an answer. A few hours later, her phone rings. A hotel employee says, well, someone tried to smoke on my roof. And in that moment, we learned that that detective might have not found the shooter, but she certainly found her answer. Because today, that person that tried to smoke on the roof is on trial for the murder of a major presidential candidate. And when these prosecutors chose to bring those charges against Mr. Cosby, they took on a burden to prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. It's the heaviest burden in our legal system, members of the jury, and it's certainly not one of these prosecutors are going to be able to meet today. Because over the course of today's trial, we're going to ask you to pay attention to 3 holes that the government just can't explain away. First, no witness, no weapon. You'll hear that this shot, it was conducted with a very specific kind of gun, not just any kind of gun, a military-grade sniper rifle. But you're not going to see a sniper rifle today. You're not going to see a picture of one. Why? The Secret Service never found one. You won't hear from anyone or see anything that'll show you Mr. Crosby had access to that kind of gun on July 4th. No witnesses. The Secret Service, they talked to a lot of people over the course of this investigation. But today, no one's going to sit in this chair and say, I saw Mr. Crosby leveling a rifle on the top of the Sonesta Hotel. No one's going to say, I saw Mr. Crosby with a rifle, or I saw Mr. Crosby pull the trigger. The only eyewitness that you'll hear from will tell you that Mr. Crosby tried to smoke on a roof. And when you told him it was for employees only, he went back downstairs. That's it. So, that brings us to the last fact. There's no evidence that Mr. Capello had a plan. The prosecution's going to want to make you believe that this was the perfect crime. There were no cameras on his floor. There was no ID card necessary to get to the roof. All of the pieces were discarded, but I want you to listen for any evidence of that evidence. We expect you won't hear it. Look, Mr. Crosby will be the first to admit he didn't like Mr. Capello. But he's going to waive his Fifth Amendment rights to sit on that stand and tell you that he certainly didn't kill him. He was there to protest. And when that shot rang out, that was exactly what he was doing. And an eyewitness saw him there. That eyewitness saw him there because that's where he was. So why are we here today? You'll learn that all Mr. Crosby is guilty of. Going to Philadelphia to protest, smoking on the roof. And the Secret Service, they just couldn't accept that. Because they couldn't find the shooter. So they needed to find an answer. So they picked one. That's why at the end of this trial, I'm going to come before you again. I'm going to ask you to find Mr. Crosby not guilty. Thank you.
Is there anything we need to take up before the government calls the first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to enter Exhibit 16 into evidence. All objections have actually been waived to this exhibit. It's the forensic report from the FBI.
Is that correct?
No objection pursuant to stipulation, Your Honor.
Exhibit 16 is received.
All right. With that, the United States calls Morgan Devico to the stand. Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. I'm Morgan Devico.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a special agent with the Secret Services.
How did you get into being a special agent for the Secret Service?
Well, I received my bachelor's degree from UChicago in criminal justice, and I've been working for the Secret Service for about 21 years now.
And how are you involved in this?
Well, I was the agent who oversaw the protective detail for Senator Capello at his rally at Rittenhouse Square on July 4th of 2022.
Were you there when he was shot?
I was. I was in the crowd. I watched as that bullet hit his forehead and his neck flipped back and the body flopped onto that stage.
Now, after Senator Capello shot, did you and any other agencies investigate it?
We did. Immediately, a joint task force was put together in collaboration with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Did you and the FBI figure out where the shot came from?
We did. We started by investigating the entire area and found that there were a possibility of 5 buildings that could have matched the description required for this shot to be fired from a distance.
Did you figure out, were you able to narrow it down from those 5 buildings?
We were. We narrowed it down to one building in particular, the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel.
When you went to the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel, what did you find?
Well, there were 2 main pieces of evidence that we found on that hotel rooftop. There was a cigarette butt and a bullet.
I want to start with that bullet you just mentioned, Your Honor, approaching Mr. Harper with the bullet. Witness. Does
Thank you.
that look familiar?
It does, yes. This is that bullet that was recovered on the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel.
What did you learn from that bullet?
Well, what we learned from this bullet is that it was actually the exact same type of bullet, a 7.5 NATO cartridge that was found inside the victim's head after he died.
You just said you saw the same bullet. A bullet that was identical to the one that hit Senator Capello. Did you find anything linking Mr. Crosby to that scene?
So like I was saying, on that same rooftop, we actually found a cigarette butt that allowed us to tie Mr. Crosby to that rooftop.
Your Honor, approaching Mr. Harper with a cigarette butt. Thank you. Witness.
Thank you.
Is that cigarette butt?
Yes, that's the same cigarette butt that we found on the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel.
Did you find any forensic information from that cigarette butt?
We did. When we sent this cigarette butt to the lab for testing, we found 2 main things. It had DNA on it that matched Mr. Crosby's, and it was also covered in gunshot residue, or GSR.
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of foundation, if I may be heard. Sure. Your Honor, the witness just testified that it was covered in gunshot residue. Your Honor, that's not my understanding from what the forensic report said, and unless this witness has further foundation to demonstrate the extent to which the cigarette was actually covered with gunshot residue, we need to hear that foundation of the record.
Strikes me as a great question on cross-examination overall.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you get a chance to finish your answer?
Right, so as I was saying, this cigarette butt, it had DNA on it that matched Mr. Crosby. And it was also testing positive for gunshot residue when we sent it to that lab.
So if a cigarette butt was found on that rooftop that tested positive for Crosby's DNA, I want to talk about whether or not there was training necessary to hit a shot from that hotel.
All right.
Do you know how far the hotel rooftop was from the Rittenhouse Square?
Right, so Rittenhouse Square was some ways away. It would have been 604 yards exactly, all the way to that hotel rooftop.
And where did that shot hit Senator Capello?
It hit him about 5 millimeters to the side of his forehead, right about here.
And you just said that that shot would have been 600 yards and that it hit a man dead center in the forehead. I want to talk about whether or not this defendant had the training necessary to hit that shot. Did you ever figure out what training this defendant may or may not have had?
I did. I reviewed a record of his time in the military that detailed some of that training.
Approaching Mr. Harper with a redacted version of their 14. Approaching the witness was saying.
Thank you.
Does that look like that military record?
It does, yes. It's a redacted version of that same military record that I reviewed.
Does it look like a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to move Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Any objection to the exhibit as redacted?
Yes, Your Honor, to character evidence.
All right.
Your Honor, in this document, although much of it is redacted, it still states that Mr. Crosby was dishonorably discharged from the military. And Your Honor, the underlying facts surrounding that discharge was that Mr. Crosby had actually assaulted another CO. Certainly, Your Honor, this information is being used to show propensity that Mr. Crosby either one was aggressive or violent, and that is being used to show action in conformity therewith, and it's inadmissible under Rule 404.
I'm gonna ask the witness if you can give me the copy of the exhibit, just so I can see it, so I know what we're talking about here.
Of course.
Government counsel, would you like to respond?
Yes, Your Honor, that's actually not the purpose we're using it for. In fact, the redactions are for the purpose of making sure the jury doesn't see that evidence of him hitting somebody in the face with the butt of his rifle. That information is being kept from the jury so that we don't have character evidence issues. All we're using it is for what's at the bottom, if you look, that he was dishonorably discharged for dishonesty. That's protected under Rule 608 because it goes to his truthfulness.
So it looks to me like we have two sentences, just, I want to clarify. So there's the sentence that says dishonorable discharge on August 8th, 2017, and then at the bottom, after the redactions, it says, but dishonesty violated code of ethics for defaulting in dishonorable discharge. First question, are you objecting to anything on the document other than those two sentences?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and are you objecting to both of those sentences or just one of them?
Both, Your Honor, but specifically the sentence that he was dishonorably discharged for dishonesty. But any relation to the dishonorable discharge, Your Honor, goes to propensity because the underlying facts of that discharge are Mr. Crosby's aggressiveness.
Well, but the jury's not going to know that because that's been redacted. Could I ask you to respond to your friend on the other side's argument that dishonesty is something that is allowed, and evidence of dishonesty is allowed? Why is he not right about that?
Yes, Your Honor, dishonesty, evidence of dishonesty is allowed. Specific instances of conduct of dishonesty aren't necessarily allowed on direct examination. And this is a specific example. Mr. Crosby was dishonest and it was propensity. It needs to be a reputation or opinion evidence before we get into specific instances of conduct on cross.
May I be heard on those grounds, Your Honor?
Briefly, yes.
Your Honor, we don't intend at any point in this direct examination to actually talk about those sentences about dishonesty. I'm actually saving them for the cross of the defendant when they're proper.
Response, Your Honor?
Very briefly.
The jury will see that specific instance of conduct at this moment.
But they won't because it's redacted. So the objection is overruled. The document as redacted is submitted. I'll give it back to the witness.
Thank you.
Yes,
Your Honor.
Ma'am, what did you learn about the defendant's military background from this document?
The defendant was a military grade trained sniper. He'd won the Armed Forces All Army Sniper Competition in 4 years in his time at the military, and he holds the U.S. Armed Forces record with a bullseye from 1,504 yards away.
So we established that he has the training to hit a shot from 1,504 yards away. I want to talk about whether or not he had the anger to do a kill. Did you review any tweets or social media activity from the defendant after you determined that he was maybe a suspect?
I did. I reviewed 2 Twitter posts to be exact.
Approaching Mr. Harper with, he's at 12. When?
Thank you.
Does that look familiar?
Yes, this is the first Twitter post that I reviewed that Mr. Crosby posted.
When was that date?
The date that this post was published was April 5th of 2022.
What did this defendant say 2 months before the shooting about Senator Capella?
Point of order, Your Honor. Just ask Mr. Chandler off of the exhibit into evidence before reading it to the members of the jury.
My apologies, Your Honor. I'd ask that Exhibit 12 be entered today.
Without a doubt.
Great. While we're pausing, can I ask, did you offer exhibits 5 and 7? I don't recall you doing
Oh,
something.
did I?
Are those pre-admitted?
They're not pre-admitted. If I didn't enter them, my apologies. I'd ask you, I believed I did, but would I think to
Well,
enter
to the
Exhibit
extent-
5 and 7?
Do you have any objections?
No objections to 5 and 7.
So to the extent they weren't already admitted, they're admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Let's get back to Exhibit 12. What did this defendant say about Thomas Capella?
Well, we can see on this first line here, he said, Thomas R. Capello is a threat to every person in this country.
Was that all he said, Agent?
Well, no. The defendant goes on to say, as long as he is alive, none of us are safe.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Nomination.
Yes, Your Honor. Can you retrieve exhibit 7 and exhibit 12 from the witness?
Absolutely.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, Secret Service agent.
Good afternoon.
I want to talk a little bit more about how you got involved in this.
Sure.
Say that this is high risk, right?
Absolutely. Mr. Capello was in a public area, so I would say the event was high risk.
Let's break that down. He was in a public area, right?
That's right.
In a major city.
Yes, sir.
There were thousands of people.
That's correct.
There were hundreds of surrounding buildings.
Yes, in the city itself, there were.
You even told Mr. Capello, sir, I don't think you should have this rally here, right?
That's true, but when the Secret Service is dealing with a stubborn protectee, it's difficult to say no.
You're right, Agent. He insisted on having the rally in Rittenhouse Square, true?
That's correct.
And the risk was so high that they asked you, the head of protection, to coordinate his security detail, true?
That's right.
It was your job to keep Mr. Capello safe.
Exactly. The job of myself and numerous other Secret Service agents who were there that day.
Ma'am, you led the charge to keep Mr. Capello safe, true?
That's right. I oversaw those officers.
And on July 4th, the person that you were supposed to keep safe was assassinated, wasn't he?
That's correct. Mr. Capello was assassinated on that day.
Well, let's talk about what other role you played in the investigation. Because, ma'am, like you mentioned, you helped in the investigation as well.
That's right.
You led the Secret Service part of the investigation.
Yes, in collaboration with the FBI.
Ma'am, can you tell the members of the jury how many times you investigated a homicide?
Over the course of my 21 years with the Secret Service, I haven't investigated a particular homicide, but I've done investigations into attempted assassinations numerous times.
Right, so you have literally never investigated a homicide in your life, right?
Not a homicide specifically, that's correct.
But in this trial, you led the investigation into a homicide, true?
On the Secret Service side of things, that's correct, but we also work with the FBI. That's the exact reason why.
So let's turn to your first homicide investigation. I want to start with this cigarette.
All right.
Because you told us that there was forensic evidence on this butt.
There was, yes.
Well, I want to be clear about what that evidence can and can't tell us. Because we can agree, when you smoke a cigarette, you probably leave your DNA on it, right?
That's correct. And that's what we found in this case.
When you smoke a cigarette, you probably leave your fingerprint on it, true?
That's right.
But when you smoke a cigarette, that doesn't necessarily mean that you killed a US senator, right?
No, certainly not.
And the reason why you say this is evidence that you did is because there was gunshot residue on this cigarette, right?
That's correct. The cigarette test.
I mean, I want to be clear. That test, they can't tell us when the cigarette was left there, can it?
That test alone, no.
Can't tell us when the gunshot residue got on that cigarette.
You're correct, sir.
Can't tell us if it was left on the 2nd of July or the 3rd of July.
That's correct.
So you can't tell us if it was left at any point in time before July 4th. True.
That's right.
Then let's turn to this tweet. Because remember, you said this was more evidence of motive, right?
Right, that's one of the Twitter posts that we looked at to describe how Mr. Crosby felt about Mr. Capello, the deceased candidate.
Man, you get hundreds you see hundreds of death threats like these on a daily basis, right?
Right, death threats exactly like those.
And when you saw this death threat, you wouldn't have thought it was a credible threat at all.
No, that's not true.
Man,
When
we
we
can
s-
agree. Excuse me, Agent. Continue.
Right, when we saw that tweet in the context of that investigation, we did view it as a threat.
Right, let's be clear. After July 4th, that's when you saw that tweet as a threat, right?
That's correct.
Then let's turn to the plan that Mr. Crosby might have had. Because it's true, you think that Mr. Crosby, that this crime was pretty well thought out, right?
We thought so, yes, especially given the defendant's military background.
You thought that there were no cameras in the stairwell?
Right, there were no functioning cameras in the stairwell.
No ID card to get on the roof?
That's correct.
You think that the killer disassembled the gun and hid all the pieces so you can't find them, right?
That's correct.
Man, you don't have any evidence to show us that Mr. Crosby knew anything about the security at the Sonesta before he booked his trip, do you?
No, I disagree with that.
If you can point us to a piece of evidence that shows Mr. Crosby knew there weren't any key cards necessary to get on the roof before he arrived in Philadelphia.
Yes, I can.
What's that evidence, man?
Well, sir, Mr. Crosby admitted himself in his interview with the FBI that he was staying at the Sonesta Hotel and claims to have accessed that same rooftop on July 3rd without any kind of key card.
Man, my question wasn't about when he was in Philadelphia, it was before he got there. Because we can agree, there is no evidence to show that before he arrived at that hotel, he knew anything about the security detail. True?
Right, he wasn't a suspect before he arrived in Philadelphia. That's correct.
Man, I'm not asking if he was a suspect. I'm asking if you know Mr. Crosby went to that hotel and checked to see if there was an ID. Because there's no evidence of that, right?
Right, sir, not before he was staying in that hotel.
Before he was staying at that hotel, you can't tell. If we checked to see if there were security cameras on the 25th floor, right?
Right, not before he arrived.
Man, before he arrived in Philadelphia, you can't even tell us that he knew exactly where the rally was going to be.
That's correct.
But it's your testimony that he booked this trip 3 months in advance, all the way in April. True?
Right, I don't believe I testified to that fact yet, but that's our understanding of when he booked that reservation.
Then let's turn to the witnesses. Because it's true, you interviewed a lot of people for this investigation, right?
Yes, everyone in the area was a suspect until they weren't.
You canvassed the entire area, right?
That's right.
Ma'am, not one person can tell you, I saw Mr. Crosby with a rifle on the top of the Sonesta Hotel. Could they?
No, there were no eyewitnesses to the shooting itself.
There were no eyewitnesses that saw Mr. Crosby with a gun at all.
That's correct.
There were no eyewitnesses that saw Mr. Crosby actively on the roof either, right?
No, the only eyewitness we have says they saw Mr. Crosby walking up the stairwell to the roof about 1 hour before the murder took place.
Right, but that wasn't the only eyewitness you found, was it?
That was the only eyewitness who sent in a tip to the FBI.
Well, there was another eyewitness that said he saw Mr. Crosby all the way in the square around the time of the shooting. True?
Objection, Your Honor. You're set.
Response, Your Honor? Only offering it for the effect on the listener. That eyewitness is actually going to testify today. We don't need to use this for the matter asserted. I'm using it to show the lack of effect that it had on her investigation. That she had a credible alibi witness and she still continued to investigate into Mr. Crosby.
Have you heard of those guys, Your Honor? Yeah. Your Honor, if that witness is coming to testify, then we should let that witness talk about it. Bringing it out now is hearsay being used for the truth of that.
So I tend to agree with that. Would you like to explain to me how you're going to use it for the effect of her investigation?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm about to ask her if Mr. Crosby was still investigated into after she learned about this alibi.
I don't see why that's relevant. Do you have anything else?
Your Honor, it was only relevant to the extent that she didn't take into account the tip, but it's our contention that that is relevant information because we're still in trial today. Mr. Crosby's on trial for a murder presidential candidate, and there's someone that saw him somewhere else at the same time.
So I think you could ask her whether she followed up on that tip, how she followed up on that tip, but I think the mere fact that she still investigated her client isn't relevant. So I'm going to sustain the objection at this point. If you want to try to lay foundation, you're welcome.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, I want to talk about the weapon finally in this case. Because you know, this gun, the gun that was used was a sniper, right?
That's correct.
Ma'am, there's not a sniper rifle in court today, is there?
No, we didn't find the murder weapon.
Certainly didn't leave it in the evidence locker before you came to court today.
No, we did not.
You don't even have a picture of a rifle, do you?
No, we once again did not find the murder weapon.
So in a murder case, you didn't find the murder weapon, true?
Yes, you could put it that way.
And the only thing you found was one, but true.
That's right. We found what's called a trigger guard deposited in a trash can at the Cleavers that was in the area.
That piece didn't have DNA on it,
No, it didn't.
didn't have fingerprints on it,
That's correct.
didn't have anything. And that's what Mr. Crosby did that trigger, right?
No, all we could determine from that trigger guard was that it had to have been connected to a certain type of sniper rifle.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor, nothing further.
And first, I want to talk about whether or not the death of Senator Capello affected your job. After his death, were you fired?
No, of course not.
Were you demoted?
No, I'm still a special agent with the Secret Service.
Did you take a pay cut?
Not at all.
Okay, well, Mr. Harper, I asked you about whether or not this defendant had the ability to disassemble and hide that rifle. Did you find any evidence that he knew how to disassemble a rifle?
Absolutely, yes. The defendant is a veteran who worked as a sniper in the Army for years, for about 9 years to be exact.
We learned that there was a piece found at the Cleavers. Find any evidence that this defendant went to that Cleavers?
He did. He admitted in his interview to the FBI that after where he claimed to be at the rally on July 4th, he went to that Cleavers for lunch.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
Did we cross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Witnesses, excuse me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Government, do you have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. First, we'd ask for a moment to move that whiteboard to the center for use of the demonstrative during this case.
Any objections?
Not at this time, Your Honor. We reserve the right to object depending on what happens.
Also, it's going right there, so if you want to move when that happens, it's
That's fine with me.
We'd like to call Harper Edwards to the stand. You see me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Harper Edwards.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
Right now, I'm a front desk receptionist down at the Sonesta Hotel. It's about 8 blocks away in Rittenhouse Square.
I'm going to talk about what you were doing on July 4th, 2022. Did you work at the Sonesta Hotel on July 4th, 2022?
I did, yeah. I worked a double that day, so I was there almost all day.
Did you ever go up to the roof?
I did, yeah, breaking a nasty smoking habit. So I went to the roof for a smoke break.
What time was that?
About 12:30.
Did you ever come back down?
Sure, yeah, at about 12:45, I came back downstairs.
I have a question. How do you access the roof of that hotel?
So there's an emergency stairwell at one end of the building. It accesses all the floors, including the roof.
Did you see anyone in that emergency stairwell when you came down at 12:45?
I did, yeah. I saw a guy going up to the roof about 12:45.
Do you recognize that guy in court today?
Yes, I do. He's the man sitting at the end of the table there in the red tie.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the record reflect that she is identified with the defendant.
Chandler.
Ma'am, how sure are you that this defendant is the person you saw?
100%.
Ma'am, I want to talk about what 100% means to you.
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative, if I may be heard.
Please.
Your Honor, Judd is another testifying witness in this trial. During pretrial, Mr. Chandler chose to sequester these witnesses for a reason. And to put this demonstrative in the middle of the well while this witness is testifying violates that motion and is more prejudicial than probative. It's not the time in direct examination to compare two witnesses. That's a matter for closing, Your Honor.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Yes, I'll start out by saying the court is skeptical about why we're showing the jury the name of a witness who's not on the stand and has not testified yet, but I will let you give you a chance to convince me I'm wrong about that.
Yes, Your Honor. First, we don't intend to put anything under here. So this name is just for future so that we don't have to waste time later putting it up there. In terms of the witnesses being able to see it, I put it here specifically so that the witness actually couldn't see this board, so it won't impact her testimony at all.
Well, given that this is a whiteboard, I think I'm going to ask you to remove that name from this board at this point.
Perfectly fine with that, Your Honor.
For a response, Your Honor?
Okay, well, I've just told him to take that name off.
Yeah, I have a brief question, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor,
Okay.
even if we erase that second name, we would have to erase the former name. We would have to erase the former name when Judd testifies. Your Honor, there's no actual probative value to this demonstrative. It does not help the jury substantially understand the evidence anymore. It was meant to try to compare two witnesses, which is not applicable in this part of the trial and is a matter for closing. Either way, it does not help the trier of fact in actually determining the fact that issue. It's just a matter for closing. If Mr. Chandler wants to use this on closing, he certainly can.
I'm going to overrule that at this point. I think there's some marginal probative value, and I don't think it's going to confuse the jury. So you can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, I want to talk about what 100% means to you. Can you tell us if the person you saw, this defendant, was wearing a hat?
He was, yes.
Can you tell us what color it was?
Yeah, it was a black hat.
Can you tell us the color of his shirt?
Yeah, he was wearing a black shirt.
Do you know if he was wearing a backpack?
Yeah, one of those drawstring backpacks, he was.
What color was that?
It was black too.
Ma'am, when you saw this defendant wearing a black hat, black shirt, black hat, did he tell you what he was trying to do?
Yeah, he told me that he was trying to go up to the roof for a smoke.
Ma'am, do you know where he went after you guys had that interaction?
Well, I told him that guests weren't allowed on the roof. I saw him go back down the stairs and into one of the rooms on the 25th floor.
Ma'am, is there anything stopping this defendant from going back up those stairs on that day?
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for speculation, if I may be heard. Your Honor, the witness can testify to the security details of the 25th floor and the rooftop, but she certainly cannot testify as to whether or not Mr. Crosby specifically had the ability to go on that rooftop, because frankly, Your Honor, we contend he was almost 600 yards away.
I think the question as phrased technically called for speculation is really phrased.
Yes, Your Honor. Is there anything in the security detail of the building that prevents someone from going from that room back up to the roof?
No, I told him not to go up there, but it's not like the door was locked or anything. It's possible he could have gone back after I left.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Harper, do you want me to leave this, move this? What do you want?
You can leave for just 1 second.
All right.
Can I borrow the marker? Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm great. What about yourself?
I'm well. Thanks for asking.
I just have a few questions about what you just told us on direct examination. Because, ma'am, it's true, you were on the roof of the Sonesta on the 4th of July, true?
Yeah, that's right.
You were smoking a cigarette on the roof of the Sonesta on the 4th of July, true?
That's right.
You're not on trial for murdering a major presidential candidate, are you?
I hope not. No.
I want to talk about what you actually saw that day. Because, ma'am, all of this right here, you didn't see that at the time of the shooting, did you?
No, I think they told me the shooting was at 1:45.
And you saw Mr. Crosby at 12:45, right?
That's right. Yes.
That's 1 hour before the shooting, correct?
Sounds right to me.
And you don't know where Mr. Crosby went after you saw him, do you?
Well, I know he went back into that room, but I don't know where he went after that.
And after you saw him going back in his room, you can't tell us where he went.
No, sir. I went back downstairs.
Can't tell us if he went back to the rally.
No, I don't know.
Can't tell us anything about his whereabouts for an entire hour before that gun was shot. True?
No, like I said, I didn't see him again.
Then let's walk through some more specifics of what you saw. Because, ma'am, you saw Mr. Crosby try to go up for a smoke. True?
That's what he said. Yeah.
He said, sir, you can't go up there, right?
Right.
He said, okay, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Went back downstairs. True?
Correct.
Well, I want to see if you saw any weapons, because ma'am, you didn't see him with a gun, did you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see him carrying a big duffel bag, right?
No, like I said, he had the drawstring back.
You didn't see him with anything that, well, with any firearm at all, right?
No, I didn't.
Finally, I want to talk about the information about the security that you mentioned earlier. You said there's no cameras on the 25th floor, right?
Right, yeah, no cameras that are working on the 25th floor.
No cameras in the stairwell,
That's true.
no ID card access to the rooftop.
Right, yeah, you don't need a card or anything.
Ma'am, you work at the Sinesta, right?
I do, yes.
You certainly don't put that information in your ad campaigns, do you?
Do we advertise that you don't need a key card to get to the roof? No, we don't.
Right. You don't post that online for people to see, do you?
I don't run the Sinesta Instagram or anything, but I don't think so.
Well, to your knowledge, the Sinesta Instagram doesn't say, come here, there's actually a free rooftop that you don't need an ID card to access, right?
Not that I've seen.
It doesn't say, actually, there's no cameras, it's safe, right?
No, I don't think they say that. No.
To your knowledge, that isn't public information at all. Sure.
Sir, I have no idea.
To your knowledge, it's not public information as a hotel employee at the Sinesta, true?
Not that I've seen. I don't know.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank your honor, nothing further. Let's redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, when you saw this defendant in a black hat, black shirt, black backpack, do you know what was in his backpack?
I have no idea.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
Free cross, your honor. Absolutely. Ma'am, that backpack was a drawstring bag. True.
That's right.
Nothing further. Thank you, your honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, you may. Your Honor, at this time, the United States doesn't have any more witnesses. We have to be able to publish those exhibits to the jury.
Let's hold off on that for now because I anticipate we might be using it on a further witness and I don't want to be passing it back and forth over and over again.
All right.
But we can certainly do that at the conclusion of the evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Nothing else from the government?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Vince?
Yes, your honor. We called Great Judd to the stand. May I proceed? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Hi, I'm Greg Judd.
Where are you from, Miss Judd?
I'm from Jersey. It wasn't obvious from my accent. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
Ma'am, do you know why you're here today?
Yeah. I was at Tom Capello's political rally, and I know I might not seem like a big protester, but I'm actually pretty good at that. I was there when he was shot.
I want to talk about that a little bit more. Who exactly was Thomas Capello?
Tom Capello, he was running for office back in 22. You know, he was a candidate with some pretty strong views. I didn't quite align with that. So I was there to protest him.
And where was this protest happening?
It was right here, so it was here in Philadelphia.
And where exactly in Philadelphia was it held?
It was around a Rittenhouse Square, not too far from here.
Were you the only protester there?
Oh, no, sir, we're talking political rally. And there were a lot of people on all sides of me. It was real crowded there.
Approaching the witness was what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 12.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you read that document to the members of the jury?
Yeah. It says, Tom Capello is a threat to every person in this country. As long as he's alive, none of us is safe. This is the time for the Patriots.
Have you heard something like that before?
Yeah, so these political rallies, they're not my first rodeo. I heard a lot of yelling at these places. People, they yell threats, they yell a lot of things. It's a little chaotic there.
Did you hear anything specifically on July 4th?
Oh, yeah, so I mean, things like this, they were said to my right and my left. It was everywhere.
In that case, I want to talk about Mr. Crosby specifically. Do you know?
Yeah, I met Crosby at a rally in, July 1st, I think. We talked for a few minutes, got to know each other.
Would you say you're friends?
No, sir, I mean, he was nice, but I don't know him like that.
Do you know if he was at the protest that day?
Oh, yeah, Crosby was there. We chatted a good bit. He's a funny guy. Saw him there.
When exactly did you see Mr. Crosby at the hotel?
I saw him at,
Excuse me, in the square, excuse me.
yeah, I saw him at the rally, after 10, that's when I got there. I can't tell you the exact time. I don't wear a watch, but I saw him before the shoot.
To be clear, ma'am, how confident are you that the person you saw was Mr. Crosby?
Oh, so there's no doubt. I'm 100% sure.
Do you know if you saw him at the Sonesta Hotel that day?
Sorry. What's the next step?
Ma'am, it's a hotel in the area. Did you see Mr. Crosby there?
No, sir, I was not at the next. I saw him at the rally here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor, nothing further.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, just a moment ago, you said something interesting.
But write it down.
Okay.
You said at the protest, you chatted a good bit with this defendant, isn't that right?
Yeah, good stuff.
Ma'am, you know what perjury is, isn't that right?
Of course, it's a real scary time.
You know it's important not to lie when you're under oath.
Of course.
And you didn't chat to this defendant on July 4th, did you?
I saw him there. He was definitely in a crowd. I don't know if Crosby said anything to me, but I saw him while I was chatting with a bunch of people.
Ma'am, that's not what I asked. I asked, you never spoke to him, did you?
I didn't hear his voice, no.
When you said we chatted a good bit, that wasn't true, was it?
He was in a crowd. I was chatting. I like to chat. He was there in that crowd with me.
Ma'am, when you said you chatted a good bit with this defendant, that wasn't true, was it?
Sorry.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, when you said you chatted a good bit with this defendant, that wasn't true.
Sir, he was in the crowd when I was chatting. Didn't hear his voice. You're right.
So that wasn't true. You said a moment ago that you were 100% sure you saw this defendant. I want to talk about what 100% sure means to you.
Okay.
Ma'am, it's important that you can't see the front of this, you can't see the front of this, right?
No.
I reread my objection. It's still our contention that comparing two witnesses during the evidence phase of a trial to the jury is not a matter for this time. It's a matter for closing arguments, and it evades the problem of the jury at this time.
And counsel, what is the relevance of this that's not wildly argumentative?
The relevance is establishing the difference between the two. I disagree that that's not something that you can do in court. It's something that's important to.
Oh, at 100% you can agree you can do this during closing. I'm just trying to figure out why this isn't wildly argumentative right now.
Your Honor, it's important for the jury to understand that this witness can't establish a number of the things that Edwards can establish.
I guess, so the question is, what fact are you eliciting from this witness that you need to talk about?
That she says she's 100% sure, just as Edwards did, but can't tell us if he was wearing a hat, it's color. Can't tell us if he was wearing a shirt, it's color. Can't tell us if he had a backpack, it's color.
So I'm gonna sustain this objection. I think there is no material relevance to showing an exhibit that talks about another witness while you're examining this witness. I'm gonna ask you can use this during closing. I have no problem with that, but I think right now it's argumentative.
Yes, Your Honor. Now let's talk about what 100% means to you,
That's why.
because we can agree. You can't tell us if he was wearing a hat. Isn't that true?
I was paying a lot of attention to my own outfit, but don't know what Crosby was wearing now.
You can't tell us what color the shirt was.
Don't think so. He was standing in a crowd.
You can't tell us whether or not he's wearing a backpack.
No, I don't remember seeing him with a backpack. I'm not sure.
Ma'am, you were there from 10 a.m. to 1:45, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You can't tell us when in that range you saw this defendant, isn't that right?
Oh, no, sorry. It was chaos. I mean, people running, shouting, making signs, but I saw Crosby there.
But ma'am, drawing you back to my question, you don't know when in that range you saw this defendant, isn't that right?
I can't give you a specific time, no.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
there any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, with the court permission, Ms. Judd can be excused.
Witness excused.
Thank you.
This time we call Mr. Blake Crosby to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, my name is Blake Crosby. It's nice to meet you all.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I mean, right now, not much. I do ride share. I just try to make ends meet, pay next month's rent.
Mr. Crosby, I want to talk about how we got here. Address the allegations against you directly. Did you kill Thomas Capello?
No, absolutely not.
Were you on the rooftop of the Sonesta Hotel?
No,
Did you even have a rifle in Philadelphia that week?
no, sir. I haven't touched a sniper since I left the service. I don't have access to it.
Mr. Crosby, have you been hearing the contact?
I have.
Do you remember the prosecution showing a tweet that you had made?
Yes, I heard that.
Mr. Crosby, when you tweeted this, when you tweeted that tweet, were you actually intending to kill a major presidential candidate?
No, of course not. I know this was a stupid, wrong, dumb thing to say. It was, but I never wanted to kill Senator Capello. Of course not.
And I want to talk about what you did do. Why were you in Philadelphia in the first place?
Well, I was in Philadelphia to protest Senator Capello's campaign. We had a group of veterans going around and protesting at his rallies. That's what I was there to do.
And were you there at that protest?
I was. That's where I was on the 4th of July.
And were you at the Sonesta Hotel that weekend?
I did stay there during the weekend. That's true. I got there a few days before and, that's where I stayed. But on the 4th of July, I wasn't on that rooftop.
I want to talk about like you might have been on that rooftop. So were you here when the prosecution showed us this cigarette
Yes, I was.
with more DNA on it?
Yeah, I smoked that. That's true. That is my cigarette.
Did you smoke it on the 4th of July?
No, I smoked it the day before on July 3rd. I didn't have much to do, so I went up to the rooftop for a smoke break.
And what did you do when you were done smoking?
I set the cigarette down and left.
Can you tell us exactly where you sat that cigarette?
It was on the ledge of the rooftop. I just set it down.
And can you tell us what direction that cigarette was facing?
It was just pointed, it was set on the ledge of the rooftop. I don't remember exactly which, cardinal direction it was facing, but I didn't pay much attention to it. It was just a smoke break.
Sir, we've heard today that you weren't honest about smoking this cigarette in the past. Why weren't you?
It's true, when the FBI first interviewed me, I said that I had never been on the rooftop and that I hadn't smoked. That was wrong, and I admit that now. It was wrong. But I was scared. They read me my rights. I thought they were accusing me of something I had nothing to do with, and I was terrified. It was a dumb mistake to make. I know that now.
Then I want to talk about the 4th of July in particular. You mentioned that you went to the rally, but what time did you get there exactly?
I got to the rally at around 1 p.m. Senator Capello didn't start speaking until 1:45, but I was there the whole time.
And where were you when Mr. Capello was shot?
I was standing with other veterans.
Objecting, Your Honor. The lack of foundation to how this witness knows the people he was with were veterans.
First of all, Your Honor, whether or not they were veterans isn't material. We can strike that from the record. But furthermore, Your Honor, if he was with these people, traveling with these people, there's substantial foundation on the record that he would know that they're veterans. Have you heard, Your Honor?
briefly.
Your Honor, we haven't heard that he was traveling with these people. All we heard is that he was there or with them on July 4th. The only way you could know that is if he was told that, and that would be hearsay.
To overrule that, I think maybe in a very technical sense, that's right. It doesn't strike me as particularly material. However, if there's actually an issue about whether these individuals are veterans, you can raise that. But for now, I'm going to overrule the objection. If we start getting into these other people were snipers, I agree.
Yeah,
No intention of going there. But Mr. Crosby, were you aware of any other people that could have seen at that rally?
I mean, I don't know their names or their contact info, but I was there. I'm sure somebody could say so.
And I want to talk about how we got in a court. Sir, did you ever talk with law enforcement over the course of their investigation?
I did.
When?
A few days after the shooting, the FBI, sat me down and they said, we're investigating into this murder and we have some questions for you.
Did you tell them that you didn't own a rifle?
Yes, I told them the exact same thing I just told you. I don't own a sniper rifle.
Did you tell them you were there to protest?
Yes, I told them I was at that protest and that somebody could say so, that I was the person there.
Did you tell them that you didn't plan to kill Thomas Capella?
Of course I did. I never wanted to kill him.
How did they respond?
They said that I needed to provide evidence I didn't do it.
What did they do after that?
At the end of their investigation, they placed me under arrest for his murder.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we can agree. You have a history of lying. Isn't that right?
I have lied before, that's true, but I wouldn't say I have a history of lying.
So you were dishonorably discharged from the army. Isn't that right?
That's true.
You were
Yes,
dishonorably discharged for dishonesty. Isn't that right?
that's correct. I lied about a fight and it was a big mistake. I admit that.
So let's talk about some of the other lies you told. You were asked about whether or not you'd been to the Sinestro group in your interview with the FBI. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And you lied.
The first time I was asked, I did say that I had never been there. That's true. I understand that was wrong.
You just said the first time you were asked. You were asked the second time. Isn't that right?
Correct. I was asked a few times. That's true.
That second time you said, I've never been up there in my life. Isn't that right?
Yes,
That was a lie.
that's true.
It wasn't until they showed you that this cigarette had your DNA and your fingerprints that you said you were up there. Isn't that right?
That's right. That's when I told them that on July 3rd, I went to smoke a cigarette on the rooftop.
It was only after the fingerprint and DNA, right?
Correct. Yes.
I want to talk about whether or not you're lying to us today. Because it's your story that you left the hotel at 6 a.m., right?
Correct.
And you didn't get back till after the shooting, isn't that right?
That's right. I checked out that day.
So you were in court today, right?
Yes.
You were in court when Harper Edwards took the stand.
Correct.
When she said that she saw you and was 100% sure you were at the hotel, isn't that right?
Yes, she said that. I don't know what she was talking about.
She said you were at the hotel just an hour before the shooting, isn't that right?
That's what she said. That's true.
Is your testimony she was wrong about that?
Yes, she must have been. I was at the rally.
Objection, Your Honor. That question called for speculation. The witness did answer it, but she can't testify as to whether or not he was wrong. He can testify as to whether or not it aligns with his recollection of where he was that day.
It's already on the record overruled.
That's wrong.
So let's talk about how you feel about Senator Capello, because we can agree you don't like him.
I didn't like him. No, that's correct.
But you didn't like him so much. You followed him around the country, isn't that right?
That's right. I protested different campaigns he did. I wanted to make my voice heard.
You're an Uber driver, right?
That's true. That's what I do for a living.
Like you told Mr. Harper, you're trying to make next month's rent, isn't that right?
Yes,
And even though you were just trying to manage next month's rent, you bought a plane ticket that flew you 3,000 miles from Los Angeles to Boston. Isn't that right?
that's right. I didn't like his campaign policies. You know, I'm a veteran myself and felt like he was leaving us behind.
Even though you were just trying to make next month's rent, you rented a car. Isn't that right?
Correct.
You traveled from Boston to Cambridge. Isn't that right?
That's right.
From Cambridge to Rhode Island.
Yes,
And then after protesting all day, you drove 300 miles down to Philadelphia.
that's true. I followed each of his campaign stops.
Sir, let's talk about why you might have done it. Because we can agree, you think he's a threat to everyone in this country, isn't that right?
I thought some of his policies were, that's true.
You said as long as he was alive, none of us were safe.
I did tweet that once. Yes,
You tweeted just 2 months before Senator Capello was shot.
correct. I tweeted that in April. Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
You regret.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Crosby, you were asked about your plan to protest at Mr. Capello's rallies. Did you only try to go to Philadelphia to protest?
No, I followed him from Cambridge and Boston and Providence. I followed at every one of his stops. I wanted to show my opposition to his candidacy that's true.
Were you alone at all those protests that you went to before getting to Philadelphia?
No, there were protests in every one of those stops as well.
And to your knowledge, is protesting a crime?
Not in this country, no.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Thank Your Honor, nothing further.
30 recross for this one.
No, we dropped, Your Honor.
All right. 30 your excuse.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nothing further from the defense, Your Honor. We rest our case in chief, and if it's okay with Mr. Chandler, we're ready to go into closing.
Mr. Chandler, anything from your perspective we need to do before that?
Could we club us the exhibits to the jury?
You may.
All right. Military report. Bullet.
You want to publish the cigarette as well?
Oh, of course. Your Honor, Mr. Harper. Members of the jury. 6. 6. That's not the number of feet the sniper was from Senator Capello. It was the number of football fields away he went. And when he hit that shot, from 604 yards away, he didn't hit him in the leg. He didn't hit him in the arm. He didn't do pop, pop, 2 in the chest. He did a headshot, the middle of his forehead. 1 shot, 1 kill. Members of the jury to hit that shot, you need world-class ability. Ability that this defendant had. Members of the jury, we have the record holder for the U.S. Army in the longest snipe. He's the only one that could have hit that shot. And it's why we brought him into court today. It's why we took on a burden to prove that he killed a major presidential candidate. And with that burden, we have to prove 2 things. 1, that he killed Senator Capello. And 2, that he did it deliberately. And to show you how we met our burden, we have to go through how his anger put him on that rooftop and how his training took care of the rest. So how do we know his anger put him on that rooftop? Well, members of the jury, because he was chasing them across the country. You heard today that he was an Uber driver just trying to make next month's rent. And yet he used money to fly to Boston, to buy a hotel in Boston, to buy a hotel in Cambridge, to buy a hotel in Philadelphia, in Rhode Island. He's driving 500 miles each day, getting up, protesting, then driving, protesting, then driving, protesting, then driving almost 300 miles. It's not just political activism. That's an obsession. To spend your hard-earned money that you need to chase one man? So we know he had the anger. And members of the jury, we know all too well that he had the training. 4-time winner of all Army sniper competition. Longest bullseye in the US Army. World-class talent. Members of the jury, who could hit that shot? That's the question I want you to keep asking throughout my closing, Mr. Harper's closing and rebuttal. Who could hit that shot? And the answer is going to be just this defendant. But to be thorough, we got to go through the defense that Mr. Harper presented. So he told you that everyone had access. And maybe that's right. That it was easy to get in that stairwell, but members of the jury, only one person was actually kind of trying to get up there. Other than an employee, Mr. Crosby was the only one trying to get up there. Black hat, black shirt, black backpack. He tried to tell you that we have no evidence of a murder weapon. The members of the jury, you heard on cross-examination from his question that we found a part of that rifle. We heard from Agent Devico that this defendant, well, he had the expertise to break that rifle down. And we heard that where was a part found? His stop for lunch. Members of the jury, all these coincidences, they point right to him. And in cases like these, there's something called circumstantial evidence. It's when you don't need to see somebody do a crime to know they did it. It means just because you didn't see the person, if there's evidence all around that keep pointing towards that event, then you can still find someone guilty. Members of the jury, that's what we have here today. Holds the record, hates the guy, obsessed. When you go back into deliberation, use your reason. Reject unreasonable stories. Think about his training. Think about his anger. Read that tweet, read his dishonorable discharge. And it will be clear that he killed Thomas Capello. Come to the only verdict consistent with the facts. A verdict of guilt. Thank you. Closing argument, Your Honor? May I proceed? May I please the court? Mr. Chandler. Members of the jury. They couldn't find the shooter, but they need an answer. About a year ago, Secret Service agent Morgan Devico is sitting down with Thomas Capello. He says, I want to have my rally in Rittenhouse Square, and she's panicked. She said, no. There's too many buildings, there's too many windows, and on July 4th, when she heard that gunshot, she realized she was right. There were too many people.
There were too many buildings. There were too many windows. She couldn't find the shooter, but she needed to find an answer. And here we are a year later with her answer. With Mr. Crosby on trial. But you see, the thing about that, members of the jury, is that this wasn't a typical murder case. Because in a murder case, you would probably expect to see a murder weapon, right? Not in this one. If this was an assassination, you would expect to see hard evidence of a plan, research, investigation. Not in this trial. If Mr. Crosby was a suspect, you would think someone would be able to sit on this stand and tell you, I saw him with my 2 eyes, with a rifle in his hand and his finger on the trigger, but you didn't hear that today, members of the jury. And it's not a coincidence that you didn't hear that. Because that evidence doesn't exist. And the prosecution can't just tell you, well, there's a little bit of circumstantial evidence that makes it more likely he did. When they don't have any of the crucial elements that you would expect to see in any case like this, because that's a problem, members of the jury. Because when they bring charges, they carry a burden to prove their case. They can't ask you to take their word for it. Their story might sound great, but they can't just tell you that their story is true. They have to prove it. They have to prove every single element of their charge, not until it's possible, or probable, or likely, or more than likely. They have to show you that Mr. Crosby is guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. I've said it once and I'll say it again. It's the heaviest burden in our legal system, members of the jury, and it's not one that these prosecutors have met today, certainly not without a murder weapon, without a reliable eyewitness, and without any evidence of a plan. I want to be clear. It was not the government's burden today to prove that Mr. Crosby didn't like Mr. Capello. It wasn't their burden to prove that Mr. Crosby was staying at the Sinest. It wasn't their burden to prove that Mr. Crosby even could have shoot that gun. No, it was their burden to prove that he did shoot that gun and that he did kill Senator Capello. Mr. Chandler tells you that his anger put him on that rooftop, but you know what did it? A witness. You know what did it? Forensic evidence. You know what did it? Any evidence that this government has brought to you today to show you that Mr. Crosby is guilty. So let's go through more of the holes in the government's case. First, no weapon. I've been saying it a lot, members of the jury, because you would expect to see one, because this wasn't just any weapon. This wasn't just a handgun. This was a sniper rifle that was disassembled and scattered across the city. And they want you to believe that they couldn't find a single piece. They want you to believe that because they couldn't find a single piece, oh, that just means he's so good at being a criminal. No, members of the jury, that's not how this works. Are you telling me that they didn't have a street cam showing Mr. Crosby throwing something in the trash? They didn't have any social media videos of Mr. Crosby disassembling a gun, that there wasn't a single law enforcement agency in a major city after a presidential candidate was assassinated that saw him. Oh, and he just admits to being in the place where they found the one piece of evidence that they showed him to. Not recent. So, hole number 2. They don't have any witnesses. Because I found it interesting that there were 2 eyewitnesses in this case, because it's not their witness against ours. It's their witness against every possible possibility, every reasonable possibility, members of the jury. And the fact of the matter is, there were 2 people that got on that stand that told you 2 different stories, and they didn't explain why. Does Miss Judd have to lie? She doesn't know Mr. Crosby. They're not friends. They're not lovers. She has no reason to sit on that stand and make up a tale about seeing a man she never met before July 1st of 2022. It's just reasonable doubt. Finally, they don't have a plan. Mr. Crosby booked this trip all the way back in April of 2022, and if their story is right, he knew that the semester was the. But is that what you heard today? How would he have known where the rally was when the agent told you, well, that wasn't public information? How would he know where that the rooftop didn't need ID card access when the hotel employee said, oh, we don't put that online? Do they think he's a clairvoyant that somehow assumed that the one hotel he was going to stay at was just open and didn't have security cameras? No, members of the jury, they needed to provide you evidence. They didn't do that. They didn't bring you evidence because it doesn't exist, because Mr. Crosby was just there protest. How many other veterans were in that crowd? How many of those veterans had snipers? I don't know. But the problem is that Mr. Chandler doesn't. And when he stands up in a few moments, I'm confident he's not going to be able to answer that. Think about the story they're asking you to believe. They're telling you that Mr. Crosby, he was so good that he wasn't detected by the FBI, by the Secret Service, but he was just stupid enough to leave his cigarette butt in the crime scene. Either he's a criminal mastermind, members of the jury, or he's stupid. And I think you know the answer to that question. They couldn't find the shooter. And today, they tried to show you an answer. But in trials like this, they just can't tell you that their answer is the right one. They have to bring you evidence. When you go back into the liberation room, think about everything you don't have. When you do, I'm confident you'll come to the only verdict consistent with the evidence. Don't let Mr. Chandler pick your answer for you. Not give him. Thank you.
Well, I don't know why Miss Judd lied, but I know she did. She was sitting right here. And she lied to all five, this entire jury. She told you that, oh, I chatted with him. And then I got up there to ask her some questions. We learned that was a lie. Maybe Mr. Harper's story would hold water if every one of his witnesses did lie. Miss Judd got up there, she lied. They brought this defendant up there. I can't even count the number of lies he told you. Members of the jury, we know that he was going up those stairs. We know that Harper Edwards is the only one with any credibility. The fact of the matter is, as much as he's tried to skate by it, mention those random veterans that he met at a protest, the only person where that shot was a clear shot was this defendant. Thank you.
My understanding is we're supposed to submit our ballots and make sure we get the all clear before we do anything else.